Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
It was a windy Monday when all of this happened. I was on my way home from work that day after taking a detour to the nearest Walmart to do some quick shopping. I picked up what I came here for, then headed for the checkout line. That's when I started hearing some ruckus coming from the back of the store. It was some female shrieking that could be identified by many shoppers around this area. It's a no-brainer, ladies and gentlemen. We have a Karen in the building. I tried to hear what was going on exactly, but I failed as it was somewhat farther in the back. But when I was about to leave with my groceries, I saw a woman dragging her cart and some poor employee with her near the checkout area where she found a suited-up manager and started complaining. She was shrieking about how another customer had taken the last item on the shelf before she could get to it. She wanted the item be returned to her and wanted the customer fired and banned from the store. At that moment, I realized she was a level 10 Karen. I just wanted to get out of there as soon as possible before things got uglier, because normally that's how it works and that's how it ends. After I was done with my shopping, I headed into the parking lot, and there I struggled to get into my car simply because some idiot was parking their car right next to mine without leaving much room for me to open my car door to get in, even though there are many vacant spaces around the lot. You didn't have to do that to me. Not wanting to waste so much time trying to search or wait for this other car's owner to come and move their car a bit, I squeezed myself in and started driving home. It was getting a little bit more windy, but at least I didn't have any appointments later that night. And thankfully, I could stay inside for the rest of my day. When I was nearing my neighborhood, I started seeing huge pillars of black smoke rising in the sky. I got worried as I live at the end of this street I'm driving towards, and it looks like there's a fire somewhere near my house. My heart dropped and started to beat very fast as I thought about my wife and our newborn baby in our house. But shortly after, I let out a massive sigh of relief as it was clear that it was not my house on fire. I quickly called my wife to check on her and made sure she and our baby were safe. Then I decided to park my car in a side street nearby and headed for where the smoke was coming from. My parents died in a car accident when I was very young, and I was raised by my uncle and aunt. They were the best people, and they did their best to raise me properly. One of the things they taught me from a young age is to help others when I had the chance, even if they were not related to me, even if I didn't know them. Rule was, if you can help someone out, then stick around and do it without expecting anything in return. That's why I headed towards the area where the fire was. I don't know what I could help with. I have no idea if the firefighters were there yet or not. But all I know is that I'll try to help out with whatever I can, but without being a burden on the professionals doing their job. When I reached my destination, I found the fire trucks, ambulances, and police cars filling the street. Everyone was trying to do their best to get this fire to die down. I asked one of the bystanders if anyone was still inside the house. They told me that the house was empty when the fire started and no one was injured or stuck inside. It was getting windy. We were just standing there hoping for the firefighters to be able to contain the fire before it spread to the nearby houses and made a bad situation worse. After some time, and right when things started feeling like going in the right way, I hear some loud tires screeching. Look over and lay my eyes on a familiar car. I try to remember where I saw this car before, but before I realize it was the same car that parked right next to mine in the Walmart parking lot, a familiar, angry face gets out of it and starts moving towards the fire trucks. It was Karen, the one from before at Walmart. The cop stops her and asks her to stay away until the situation settles and the fire is contained. But she starts shouting back at him. She was screaming about how they needed to move the fire trucks so she could park in front of her house. She was going on about having ice cream that was going to melt in the heat, and she needed to get it into her freezer. The officer tried to tell her that she couldn't go near her house right now because the neighboring house was on fire. He told her they needed to keep the area clear for emergency vehicles. But Karen wasn't listening. She kept shouting that she didn't care about the neighbor's house and that her ice cream was melting. She threatened to have them all fired if they didn't move the trucks right away. I couldn't see the cop's face from where I was standing, but I'm sure his jaw dropped just like mine was at how self-centered this woman is. The house next to yours is on fire, and you're bothering the cops about how the heat from the fire is going to melt your ice cream, and also get rid of the fire trucks so you could park your car where you usually do. Are you for real? The cop tries to calm her down, but it didn't work. After he explains to her that they can't do that right now and that she is going to have to wait. He told her they couldn't move emergency vehicles until the fire was contained. He suggested she park elsewhere for now. Karen wasn't listening to reason. She started talking about how she was a taxpayer who paid his salary. She kept saying it was her property and wanting they move the vehicles. After shouting more and more about her house, the ice cream and parking space, she stomps right back to her car like a child throwing a tantrum. At the moment, I thought she accepted the fact that there's no going into her house right now or even parking her car near it. She gets inside her car, turns the engine back on and presses the gas pedal as hard as she can. She drives her car into the stay-away zone and crashes into the nearest fire truck while barely missing the police officer that told her off after he jumped out of her way when he saw her car moving. After that, it was just a fiasco. Cops and emergency medical technicians were running towards her car, getting her out and placing her hands behind her back and cuffing them while she kept screaming some nonsense. She was yelling about being released, saying it was her parking spot and that her ice cream was melting. She was threatening to have everyone fired and sue the entire department. The firefighters near the fire truck that she crashed into weren't harmed, but I saw the emergency medical technicians taking care of the cop that jumped out of the way before getting run over. He injured his elbow or arm, but I'm not sure if she hit his arm with her car or he just injured it when he landed on the ground. After another hour, the firefighters managed to contain the fire and it died down. Later, I learned that this crazy Karen was facing some serious list of charges that was topped with assault and battery on a police officer. And last I heard, she was hit with 5 years in prison. But I'm not quite sure if it stopped there, as I dropped following her case since I got busier later on. I don't really know what was going on inside her crazy head doing what she did, but I'm glad she got what she deserved. Someone that mental is better off being locked inside a prison cell and away from people. I started my first job at a popular chicken place when I was 16. Let's call it Southern State Not Baked Poultry. Working there wasn't terrible, especially since the assistant manager was my best friend's stepdad. He made the tedious work almost enjoyable. The assistant manager was genuinely good at his job and cared about his employees. Before opening, we'd do silly things during prep while music blasted from his office. As long as everything got done properly, he didn't mind if we had fun doing it. But this story isn't about him. It's about our store manager. This guy was the complete opposite. Everything had to be serious. Fun was forbidden. I hated working with him. He was self-centered, power-hungry, and petty with delusions of grandeur just because he managed a fast food restaurant. His management style: work people until they burned out, then fire them and hire someone new. When he was on shift, morale was in the trash. He hated that crews preferred working with the assistant manager. He hated that we had fun during the assistant manager's shifts. He hated that our store's numbers were always better when the assistant manager worked. Really, he just hated everyone. One thing that annoyed him was this silly greeting the assistant manager did. Before the restaurant opened, he'd stick his tongue between his teeth and lower lip and shout, "Hi," followed by whoever's name had just walked in. It sounded ridiculous. I always responded the same way, which came out like, "Hi, Wowie." Here's a perfect example of what a jerk the store manager was. A young woman, due to various stressors, attempted suicide after an especially grueling shift working with him. After recovering, she returned for her final paycheck when the assistant manager was working. Not coincidentally, she called ahead to check. The assistant manager sat her down in the lobby, bought her lunch, brought her check, and talked with her for about an hour. It was after the lunch rush, so he had time. He made sure she was doing okay and let her talk about whatever she wanted. By the time she left, she was smiling, though with tears on her cheeks. She'd never had someone just listen to her troubles before. The next day, the store manager pulled the assistant manager into the office. He told him that the next time the suicide queen came in, he should tell her to do it right next time. I heard this clearly because the office was just a tiny cube with no ceiling. That gives you a clear picture of how petty and vindictive this man was. The revenge began when we learned that regional and national executives from southern state not baked poultry were coming through our area for their annual inspection. The store manager had his sights set on becoming one of those executives, at least for the region. Why wouldn't he? He did everything by the book. That made him a good manager, in his mind anyway. Everything had a checklist, a procedure, and written instructions in the book. If you couldn't meet those expectations, he'd yell and berate you. Because that's management, right? Before the executives arrived, we knew which day they were coming. Several of us agreed to mess up just enough to make the store manager lose his cool. The regional manager and national executives all believed Southern State Not Baked Poultry was a family company where employees were valuable team members. When the day arrived and the executives came for their tour, whoops, one fryer's oil had been replaced the night before. Oh look, the shaker table wasn't cleaned. Darn, we made too much coleslaw and would have to throw some away. Crap, not enough chicken in the cooker for lunch rush. Man, someone forgot to preheat the second cooker. You get the idea. After I took a minute too long getting a chicken basket into the cooker for the second time, the store manager lost it. He started screaming at me, asking what I thought I was doing and telling me to get out of the way. There was yelling, cursing, and throwing things. He pushed me away from the breading station during lunch rush while regional and national executives watched, with lines at both registers and a lobby full of customers. He stood there afterward, gulping like a fish. His mouth moved like he was trying to speak, but nothing came out. The room went silent except for a fryer beeping. I looked at him, then down at the handprints in flour on my chest where he'd pushed me. This was the moment we'd all been waiting for. I exploded. I shouted that I quit. I told him I was done with his abuse and terrible management. I yelled about how he drove morale through the floor every time he walked through the doors. I called him a horrible excuse for a manager and said if he didn't have the assistant manager and a couple good shift leads, he would have driven the place out of business long ago. I ripped off my apron and threw it at him. All the color drained from his face, and he ran to the office cube. The executives ended up giving free meals to everyone in the restaurant. The store manager wasn't fired, just demoted to assistant manager. The assistant manager was promoted to manager. About 10 years later, I was working as an emergency medical technician. We had just dropped off a patient at the hospital across from that same restaurant, and my partner was hungry, so we drove over. I hadn't been there since quitting years before. Who was working the counter but the former store manager himself? His name tag still said assistant manager. The restaurant was empty since it was between lunch and dinner. I couldn't help myself. I stuck my tongue between my teeth and lower lip and shouted a greeting to him using his name in that silly way we used to do with my tongue between my teeth. It came out sounding like Twim instead of his actual name. I haven't been back since, but that was around 12 years ago. I bet he's still just the assistant manager there. I ended up in the middle of a scene from those entitled People's Stories online. For context, I shop at Westside Grocery for years. It's close to my apartment. I know the layout well. I'm a nurse at the local hospital and usually do my shopping on days off. Last Tuesday was one of those days. I finished a 3-day stretch of 12-hour shifts. All I wanted was to grab essentials and go home to sleep. My cart was half full with bread, milk, and frozen dinners for the week. I was headed to the produce section when I heard noise. At first, I tried to ignore it. Working in healthcare, you get used to tuning out drama. Then I heard someone screaming, and my instincts kicked in. I turned down aisle 5. That's when I saw what was happening. A person in a wheelchair was trying to move through the narrow space between shelves. They had bumped into another shopper's cart by accident. A few items fell to the floor. Nothing broke, just a box of cereal and pasta. The wheelchair user told the woman softly they didn't mean to bump her cart. Their apology didn't matter to the woman. She was tall in her 40s, wearing expensive workout clothes. She yelled at the wheelchair user, asking if they knew how much the groceries cost. She told them they would pay for everything and called them a careless brat. The wheelchair user looked embarrassed as shoppers stared. They tried to reach for the fallen items but couldn't reach them easily. The woman told the wheelchair user to get up and clean the mess. That's when I knew I had to step in. I've seen too many patients treated badly to ignore this. I left my cart and walked over. I told the woman she needed to stop explaining that she shouldn't talk to the wheelchair user that way. The woman looked at me strangely. She asked who I thought I was to get involved. I told her I was someone who thinks people should be treated with kindness and pointed out she wasn't doing that. She told me to mind my business. She called the wheelchair user names and said they ruined her groceries. I pointed out nothing was ruined since the boxes were fine. I said she was making a scene over nothing. The woman's face turned red. She stepped toward me with her finger pointed at my face. She told me her husband was on the city council and she could make things difficult for me. By now, people gathered around us. A store employee was on the phone, probably calling a manager. The wheelchair user looked like they wanted to disappear. I told her I didn't care who her husband was and that his job didn't let her bully people over accidents. She warned me to move before I would regret it. She moved toward me with her hand raised to push me. My nursing reflexes worked. We deal with upset patients sometimes. When she came at me, I stepped aside and my hand moved to block her. My palm hit her shoulder and she lost balance. She fell backward, knocking over canned soups. The crash was loud. Everyone looked at us. The woman started shouting that I attacked her. She told everyone to look at what happened and asked someone to call police. The store manager came over with security. He was middle-aged and looked tired of the day already. He asked what happened. Before I could explain, the woman told a dramatic story where I was the bad person who attacked her for no reason. Then something unexpected happened. An older shopper spoke up. They said I had been helping someone with a disability who was being yelled at by the woman. Another shopper said they recorded everything on their phone. They said the woman had been threatening both the wheelchair user and me before she tried to attack. The wheelchair user spoke up too. They said the woman yelled at them for bumping her cart by accident, and I only tried to help. The manager looked at the woman still on the floor who wouldn't get up. He told her to calm down and said they could check security footage. The woman demanded I be arrested and yelled for someone to call police. The manager said police were already called. When police arrived, they listened to everyone, including witnesses. They saw the video, and their faces showed they understood what really happened. An officer told the woman that she started the problem. He said she harassed a disabled person and tried to attack a shopper who helped. The woman denied everything and said she wanted to press charges. The officer told her she was the one who might be charged with disorderly conduct and attempted assault. He said I could press charges against her if I wanted. I didn't want to press charges. I just wanted to finish shopping and go home. I told the police this. They looked happy to have less paperwork. The wheelchair user came to me when things got quiet. They thanked me and said they didn't know what would have happened without me there. I said anyone would have done the same. They disagreed and said most people just stare or walk away. They thanked me again for standing up for them. The manager came over after police took the woman out. She kept threatening lawsuits as she left. The manager said sorry about what happened and gave me free groceries that day. Word spread fast in our town. The next day, the story was on local news without names. My co-workers figured out it was me. I got high fives at work. A week later, something better happened. I was back at the grocery store when I saw the wheelchair user again. They were with their caretaker and waved me over. They told me news about the woman. Her husband came to the store asking for security footage. When he saw what really happened, he said sorry to the manager and said his wife was getting help for anger problems. I smiled. Sometimes entitled people face results of their actions. I worked as a cashier at a fast food restaurant a few years ago. This restaurant charged for everything. Want sauce with your tacos? That's 50 cents. Substitute sour cream with guacamole? You have to pay for that. Need ranch with your salad? That costs extra. All prices were on a giant menu in the middle of the lobby. I was paid minimum wage. Neither I nor the other cashiers cared about charging for extras. The prices were already ridiculous, as customers naturally wanted add-ons. Usually we wouldn't charge for most things, but only when our manager wasn't in front. She would yell at you in front of customers for giving away free sauce. On a slow day, an older woman walked in and ordered a salad. By the time it reached my register, she'd loaded it with many extras. There was no system to what I charged people for, it depended on my mood. Her salad had lots of accessories, so I felt I should charge for something. I was having a good day, so I only rang her up for the salad and extra guacamole. It was about $12.50. She started complaining about the price right away. I told her it was $11.50 for the salad and $1 for the guac. She complained that the price was too high for just a salad and even $11 was too much. I tried to explain that I was just a cashier and didn't control the menus. She wouldn't listen and only got ruder. Then she asked to speak to my manager. I looked her in the eye and told her she didn't want to do that. She demanded I get my manager right now. So I went to the back and told my manager a customer wanted to speak with her. She came to the register with me, looked at the salad, looked at what I rang up, and started going off. My manager said I didn't add the salsa, the chips, the house dressing. I was used to this, so I just stood there as my manager screamed at me. The customer looked back, shocked, as my manager took over the register. She corrected the order and left without acknowledging the customer at all. The salad came out to be around $16.50. The woman paid and left without another word. I felt a little satisfied watching her leave. Working in food service, we often help customers out when we can. Sometimes we don't charge for extras to make meals more affordable. We do this by choice, not obligation. When customers are nice, we tend to be generous. But when you're rude, you might end up paying full price for everything. The rest of my shift was uneventful. Every time I rang up a salad after that, I remembered her face when she realized her complaint cost her an extra $4. Sometimes the system works as it should. I saw her come in again later that week. This time she ordered a simple taco with no extras. At my register, she avoided eye contact. I rang her up, she paid, and that was it. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.